In this episode, we're going to visit a sacred pinnacle that's guided travelers for hundreds of years. The white men call it Shiprock. The Four Corners is one of my favorite parts of the country, primarily because of the landscapes. Monument Valley along the Utah-Arizona border draws visitors from all over the world, as does Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado. And of course, there's the monument where the four states come together. There are also many other great places out there that you've probably never heard of. And that's what this series is all about. So many people come to the Four Corners that, well, prices are getting a little high. Just a couple of years ago, you could camp on this very famous spot in Monument Valley for just $10 to $20 a night. Then they built a hotel where the rooms start at over $200 a night. And then they took down the campground and put up these sheds. I mean cabins. And they cost even more. Everyone should go to places like this. And by the way, my Touring the Grand Circle series will help you plan a great trip to up to 8 national parks in the 4-state area. But the crowds, and frankly the high prices, may keep frequent visitors and those on a tight budget away from these places. They're just becoming too expensive. And that's where this video series comes in. It's for those who simply just like to explore and discover. It's for those who don't need room service or 3 lattes a day, or a dinner jacket made out of anything other than fleece. I'm calling it the road less traveled. I've stayed in many of the small towns in the Four Corners, but it's nice to have a base camp where you can get provisions. And the biggest town in the Four Corners area is Farmington, New Mexico. It has 2 Walmarts. It's not as well known as Moab, but it also attracts people from around the world, because it's close to so many amazing places that the general public is largely unaware of. Aztec National Monument is just down the road. And 40 miles to the southwest is Shiprock. Chaco Canyon has the largest stone structures in North America, and it's just a little further to the southeast. Hovenweep National Monument and Canyon of the Ancients is to the northwest. And the weirdest and potentially most scenic place of all is just 37 miles to the south. It's called Bisti Wilderness. When driving from place to place in the Four Corners, one landmark is hard to miss. Shiprock in northwest New Mexico. It rises over 1,500 feet above the desert floor to a total height of over 7,000 feet. It's visible for 30 to 50 miles in nearly every direction. Unless there's wildfires within a couple hundred miles, as there were in this day. And wildfires in this area are not uncommon. It's been a guidepost for travelers for hundreds of years. It's sacred to the local native people, the Navajo. It's called Bit-A in Navajo, which of course I can't pronounce, but it means rock with wings, or simply winged rock. From an angle that I have yet to find, the rock apparently looks like a large sitting bird. The myth is the bird carried the Navajo here from their ancestral lands way up north to the Four Corners region. Shiprock is also special to geologists because several volcanic dikes radiate away from the main peak for miles. In places, these dikes are nearly 200 feet tall, but they're only a few feet wide. Dikes are formed when fissures open up away from the main lava dome. Over time, lava trapped in the long fissures cools and solidify. And as the rock cools, it shrinks at different rates, giving the dike the appearance of a very large stone wall. Geologists call the Shiprock Pinnacle a classic volcanic neck. It and the dikes formed 27 to 30 million years ago. After its last eruption, quite a bit of the lava failed to make it to the surface. Eventually, it cooled 2,000 to 3,000 feet below the surface. So, at the time it was formed, there was another 2,000 to 3,000 feet of rock and soil here. Yes, the dikes and even the top of the pinnacle was underground. It was covered by over 1,000 feet of rock and dirt. Pretty amazing. Wind, rain, and time eroded it all away. But where did all the material go? Well, not coincidentally, at the time of the last eruption, tectonic forces started pulling the continent apart, near where the Rio Grande flows today. This slowly created a wide basin thousands of feet deep, and they think that much of the soil removed from here helped fill in much of the gap which was created there. By the way, GPS data indicates that the rift is still growing apart at a rate of 2.8 millimeters per year. The power of nature is sometimes, very easy to forget. But not here. This was buried. Now it's not. Amazing. Shiprock is on Navajo Nation land, and they, not the U.S. government, control access to it. And FYI, rock climbing has not been allowed since a deadly incident in the early 1970s. For now, the dirt road is open to the public. Hopefully, it will remain so. There isn't much to do here but look and be amazed. Nature created this, and time revealed it to us. But for me, the most difficult thing to understand is how long did it take for the wind and the occasional rain to remove thousands of feet of rock and dirt over such a wide expanse. It's a bumpy road, but on this dry day, it was quite passable. By the way, I'm driving in a Subaru Forester. There's a little clearing and a little turnaround once you get to the pinnacle. One of the reasons I like coming to places like this is the incredible silence. Your view is unobstructed, at least to the east, for tens of miles. Yet there is not one sound to be heard. It's really something that if you live in a city, you can't even imagine. And one day I hope to do a video called Places with the Sounds of Silence. So there are no facilities here, there's no water, there's not even an outhouse. There's just the lone dirt road. How do you get here? Well, it's a little over 40 miles from Farmington, New Mexico. GPS map systems were not accurate when I visited in 2018, but when you get close, you'll be able to figure it out. When you pass a small airstrip to the east of the highway, and it is just an airstrip, there are no buildings, turn right on the paved road. Not the dirt one, turn right at the paved road. That's Highway 5. A few miles later, turn right before the dike onto the dirt road. If you're a photographer and want a great shot, first you'll need great light, which I didn't have. High, thin clouds made everything look, flat. And smoke from wildfires hundreds of miles away also reduced the amount of blue in the sky. By the way, this video was shot at about 8 in the morning. They say you can get great sunset shots west of the pinnacle from Highway 64. But I've never been there at sunset, so I don't really know. Okay, this wraps up our visit to Shiprock. I hope you found it interesting, as well as informative, even educational. If you've been through this area before, you've likely seen it. And if you plan on coming to this area, I hope this video encourages you to have a closer look, because it's one of the real gems on the road less traveled. Now we're heading 75 miles to the southeast to one of the best photo spots in the Southwest. That is, if you're willing to hunt for the shots. Because there's no trails there. It's a place that's managed by the Bureau of Land Management, or BLM. So it's a great place to park your RV and do some boondock camping. But there are no facilities whatsoever. It's called Bisti Wilderness. And in this episode, I'm going to a weird and potentially scenic place that is just 37 miles to the south. It's called the Bisti Wilderness. Like all U.S. designated wilderness areas, there are no roads or trails, and of course there's no water, so you have to be prepared. And by the way, all the drone footage was shot outside the wilderness boundary. As a pro photographer, I'm always looking for unique places to shoot. And I've been to most of the national parks, but so have millions of others. The 60 miles of trackless Bisti Badlands are still on the road less traveled, but for how long? So I thought the sooner I get there, the better. It's an amazing place for photography. A quick Google search brings up amazing photos. I had hoped to shoot some good ones myself, but the lighting wasn't cooperating. Low clouds on the horizon had masked the sunrise, and wildfire smoke muted colors. So this suddenly turned into a location scout for a future shoot. On the drive down, you'll see why an area that averages less than 10 inches of rain per year is called Farmington. Well, 3 rivers passed through the area, and as early as 1892, canals were built to irrigate crops. Canals are still important today as they feed large center pivot irrigation systems. FYI, alfalfa is the most popular crop. And it is pretty amazing how you can see that just outside the watering zone is pure desert. There's a small sign on the highway for the Bisti Wilderness parking area. But you may need a navigation system to find what the Navajo called the large area of shale hills, or Bisti, and that's obviously how it got its name. The elevation is about 6,300 feet, and just after sunrise in mid-May, the temperature was just a bit above freezing, but it warmed up rapidly. And I gotta be honest, the view from the parking lot wasn't very promising. It provided no hint of the beauty that lay beyond. But the biggest surprise was I was not alone. The lot was nearly full. I had read that the place was so desolate that some have gotten lost only to be found years later as dried bones. But the word is out, and people are coming. This day, 2 separate groups were speaking German, including this camera-carrying couple who came all the way from Vienna, Austria. Communication was difficult, but I asked them why they came.
Touristically, not that developed. It's a wilderness area.
It's pretty interesting to hear that these hikers came because there are no trails. What you see here is determined by your own desire to explore. This is one of the few places where what you see is determined entirely by your own desire to explore. Like much of the West, it's the geology that makes this place unique. So here's a little history lesson. 70 million years ago, the area was a vast tropical river delta on the western border of the Western Interior Seaway. Yes, I'm sure most of you know that there was a giant ocean, basically, that separated the continent of North America. There was abundant plant life and even dinosaurs. The river deposited silt, sand, clay, and helpfully, limestone for millions of years. About 25 million years ago, the Colorado uplift began, and the river and even the seaway dried up. At some point, a volcanic ash layer was added to the mix, and some of that old vegetation had turned to coal, and some of those coal seams burned for hundreds of years. Some of this heat baked the colorful clay layers we see today, like these orange piles. Luckily, these different types of deposits vary in hardness, and therefore they erode at different rates. And much more recently, after the last ice age, water and other erosional forces started to create the ever-changing landscape we see today. It's erosion that causes these shapes. And the wind, and every time it rains, and with each breath of wind, these structures are subtly altered. Right now, this is a pretty simple little canyon. But it's fun to imagine what this canyon may turn into a few hundred years from now. One of the most photographed areas in Bisti is the egg hatchery. It's about 2 miles out. The eggs are hard limestone remnants, revealed only after softer soil washed away. And by the way, the soft soil can be a bit tiring to walk in. So walking a few miles here is definitely harder than walking a few miles at home. Wind, water, and time continue to shape this unique geology into amazing structures, and the trick is finding them and taking advantage of the light. Remember, this is the view outside the Bisti boundary. It's pretty close to the stuff inside. As you can see, it's interesting, but not pretty. This place needs great light, and that usually means you need to shoot at sunrise or sunset. The problem with the sun is, it doesn't wait for you. If you're not set up, it's still coming. So to shoot out here, you're going to have to do some planning, and you're going to have to be prepared. Luckily, fellow photographers have posted GPS coordinates to many of the most interesting places. Some even provide detailed directions. With their help, I made my own maps based on this information, thinking I could use them since I don't have a handheld GPS. I was wrong. A handheld GPS is the way to go, and an iPhone app isn't good enough. At least none of mine were. As we have seen, the area was once rich in life, and freshwater fossils are all around. Don't disturb them. It's illegal. And rare dinosaurs have also been found. The first and only near-complete juvenile pentaceratop skeleton found was found here. It was properly removed from the site a few years ago, and it was taken to a museum in Albuquerque, along with an adult skull that was also found here. So this is an amazing place, and I wish I was better prepared for it. Next time, I'll have a handheld GPS, and I hope to spend a couple of days here, This place deserves and requires a proper shoot to help bring home a great shot. And I want to do it before it becomes mainstream, because one day it'll have its own gift shop. If Europeans are making the trip, it won't be long before even Americans stop staring at their phones and, well, maybe not. By the way, later that day, I ran into the couple from Vienna at a Walmart. They said they had walked about 10K or 6 miles, and they saw many of the things that they wanted to see, including the egg hatchery. They said they were back in about 4 hours and seemed quite happy with the experience.